Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So last week we heard about Satyabhama's inferiority complex because her rival queen, Rukmini, was given the Parijata flower by the grace of Narada Muni, who brought it from the heavenly planets. But Satyabhama felt that she was being neglected because she did not have the Parijata flower. So Krishna purposely took Satyabhama with him when he went to perform the acts on behalf of the demigods, because Bauma Asura had stolen the earrings of Aditi, the mother of the demigods, and Bauma Asura had stolen some other things. So that was the main purpose of Krishna attacking Bauma Asura. And when Bauma Asura was killed, then all the things that he had stolen were then returned to the heavenly planets. And on the way home, leaving the heavenly planets, Krishna pulled out a Parijata tree for Rukmini, for Satyabhama, because Satyabhama was thinking she wanted the flower, but Krishna said, why just the flower? I will get you the whole tree, so you get a flower every day. So Krishna uprooted the Parijata tree from the heavenly planets, and immediately Indra protested, claiming that Krishna had no right to take the Parijata tree down to earth. So there was a fight between the demigods headed by Indra and Krishna. And of course, because Krishna is Ajita, unconquerable, he defeated Indra, and thus the Parijata tree was brought from the heavenly kingdom of Indra down to earth for Satyabhama's palace. So Shukadeva Goswami pointed out that this was not a very good thing on the part of Indra. Krishna had done Indra great service. So now Indra, when Krishna wants the Parijata tree, now Indra is prepared to fight with Krishna, who did so much service for Indra. So Shukadeva chastises Indra, showing his defect. And so the chapter ended with the subject matter, Krishna and no one else is God, because after killing Bauma Asura, there were 16,100 princesses who were being held captive by Bauma Asura. And so when Krishna killed Bauma Asura, Krishna released these queens, but they indicated to Krishna, that since they had been kidnapped, now nobody would be willing to marry them. So Krishna said, so what do you want? And the queens indicated that they wanted him to marry all of them. And so Krishna said, yes, come on. And so the 16,100 princesses were brought to Dwaraka, and they were all duly married. And we heard that there were 16,100 wedding ceremonies, and in each ceremony, Krishna's mother and father, everyone was in attendance at every single wedding ceremony. And of course, Krishna established 16,108 palaces so that each queen could get special attention from Krishna. And not only that, in the evening, when Krishna would be finished with his Dwaraka business, Krishna would enter the gate which led to the 16,108 palaces, and the one Krishna would then become 16,108 Krishnas, so that each wife could have Krishna home with her every evening and not have to wait 16,108 nights to be with Krishna. So here again proves that Krishna and no one else is God. So now this first episode that we pick up today is entitled A Description of Rukmini. Once upon a time, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of all knowledge upon all living entities, from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, was sitting in the bedroom of Rukmini, who was engaged in the service of Krishna along with her assistant maidservants. Krishna was sitting on the bedstead of Rukmini, and the maidservants were fanning Krishna with yak-tail fly whisks, which are known as chamara fans. When this pastime took place, the moon had just risen, bathing the entire palace in the beautiful moonshine. Lord Krishna's dealings with Rukmini as a perfect husband are a perfect manifestation of the supreme perfection of the personality of Godhead. There are many philosophers who propound a so-called concept of the absolute truth in which God cannot do this or that. They deny the incarnation of God or the supreme absolute truth in his human-like form. But actually, the fact is different. God cannot be subject to our imperfect sensual activities. God is the all-powerful, omnipresent personality of Godhead. And by his supreme will, not only can God create, maintain, and annihilate the whole cosmic manifestation, but God can also descend as an ordinary human being in order to execute the highest mission. As it is stated by Krishna in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Ajopi son of Yayatma, Bhutanam Ishwaropi son, Prakriting swam adishtaya, Sambhavami atma mayaya. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanang srijam yaham. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. Dharma sangstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Whenever there are discrepancies in the discharge of human occupational duties, Godhead descends. Godhead is not forced to appear by any external agency, but Godhead descends by his own internal potency in order to reestablish the standard functions of human activities and simultaneously to annihilate the disturbing elements in the progressive march of human civilization. In accordance with this principle of the transcendental pastimes of Godhead, the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends in his eternal form as Sri Krishna in the dynasty of the Yadus. Religion is the law established by God. The word setu means boundary or limit, as in the case of a dike. Earth is raised up on both sides of a river or canal so that water will not deviate from its proper path. So similarly, God Himself establishes laws so that people who follow them can peacefully progress along the path back home, back to Godhead. These laws, which are meant to guide human behavior, are thus called setu. The laws of God act as a bridge to take us from material life to liberated spiritual life. The palace of Rukmini was wonderfully furnished. There were many canopies hanging on the ceiling, with laces bedecked with pearl garlands, and the whole palace was illuminated by the effulgence of valuable jewels. There were many flower orchards of Mallika and Chameli, which are considered the most fragrant flowers in India. There were many clusters of these plants with blooming flowers, enhancing the beauty of the palace. And because of the exquisite fragrance of the flowers, little groups of humming bees gathered around the trees, and at night the pleasing moonshine glittered through the network of holes in the windows. There were many heavily flowered trees of parijata, and the mild wind stirred the fragrance of the flowers all around. Incense burned within the walls of the palace, and the fragrant smoke leaked out of the window shutters. Within the room were mattresses covered with white bed sheets, and the bedding was as soft and white as milk foam. In this situation, Lord Sri Krishna sat very comfortably and was enjoying the service of Rukmini Ji, who was assisted by her maidservants. Rukmini was also very eager to get the opportunity to serve her husband, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rukmini therefore wanted to serve Lord Krishna personally, and so she took the handle of the chamara from the hand of the maidservant and began to move the fan herself. The handle of the chamara was made of gold and bedecked with valuable jewels, and it became even more beautiful when taken by Rukmini, because all of her fingers were beautifully set with jeweled rings. Queen Rukmini fanned Krishna with broad strokes. The jewels and gold on Rukmini's beautiful limbs resounded with Rukmini's effort. Rukmini's legs were decorated with jeweled ankle bells, which rang very softly between the pleats of her sari. Rukmini's raised breasts were smeared with kumkum and saffron. Thus, Rukmini's beauty was enhanced by the reflection of the reddish color emanating from her covered breasts. Rukmini's high hips were decorated with a jeweled lace girdle, and a locket of great effulgence hung on Rukmini's neck. Above all, because Rukmini was engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, although at that time Rukmini was old enough to have grown-up sons, Rukmini's beautiful body was beyond compare in the three worlds. So when we take account of Rukmini's beautiful face, it appears that the curling hair on Rukmini's head, the beautiful earrings on Rukmini's ears, Rukmini's smiling mouth, and Rukmini's necklace of gold all combined to shower rains of nectar. And it was definitely proved that Rukmini was none other than the original goddess of fortune, who is always engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Narayana. As Lord Krishna is even more beautiful than the Lord of Vaikuntha, Lord Krishna's consort Rukmini Devi is even more attractive than Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune in the Vaikuntha world. The pastimes of Krishna and Rukmini in Dwaraka are accepted by great authorities as manifestations of those of Narayana and Lakshmi, which are of an exalted opulence. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan are simple and rural, distinguished from the polished urban characteristics of those of Dwaraka. The characteristics of Rukmini were unusually bright, and Krishna was very much satisfied with Rukmini's behavior. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the next excerpt is called Why Krishna Irritates His Wives. Krishna had experienced that when Rukmini was offered a parijata flower by Narada Muni, Satyabhama had become envious of her co-wife and had immediately demanded a similar flower from Krishna. In fact, Satyabhama could not be pacified until she was promised the whole tree, and Krishna actually fulfilled his promise. Krishna brought the parijata tree down to the earthly planet from the heavenly kingdom. So, after this episode, Krishna expected that because Satyabhama had been rewarded by a full tree of parijata, Rukmini would also demand something. But Rukmini did not mention anything of the incident, however, for Rukmini was grave and simply satisfied in her service to her husband. But Krishna wanted to see Rukmini a bit irritated, and therefore Krishna schemed in order to see the beautiful face of Rukmini in an irritated condition. Although Krishna had more than 16,100 wives, Krishna used to behave with each of them with familial affection. Krishna would create a particular situation between himself and his wife, in which the wife would criticize Krishna in the irritation of love, and this Krishna would enjoy. However, in this case, because Krishna could not find any fault with Rukmini, for she was very grave and always engaged in his service, smilingly, Krishna, in great love, began speaking to Rukmini. So, in these next episodes, Rukmini Devi will become like a fragrant camphor crushed on the grinding stone of Lord Krishna's words. the lovely, chaste qualities of Rukmini will become manifest as a result of Lord Krishna's apparently insensitive words, just as camphor's fragrance becomes manifest when granules of camphor are crushed by a grinding stone. Thus considering, Krishna decided, if I speak like this to Rukmini, I should be able to provoke Rukmini's anger. Krishna's mentality can thus be understood herein as follows. Krishna was thinking, yes, when I gave Rukmini a single flower from the heavenly Parijata tree, Satyabhama showed such a torrent of fury that I could not pacify Satyabhama even by bowing down at her lotus feet. It was only when I gave Satyabhama a whole Parijata tree that Satyabhama was finally satisfied. However, Rukmini did not display any anger even when Rukmini saw me give Satyabhama the whole Parijata tree. So how can I enjoy the nectar of angry words from this wife Rukmini, who never feels jealousy, who is supremely sober, and who always speaks pleasingly? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now the next episode is entitled Krishna Teases Rukmini. Rukmini was the daughter of King Bhishmaka, a most powerful king. Therefore, at this time, Krishna did not address her as Rukmini. Rather, Krishna addressed her this time as the princess. My dear princess, it is very surprising. Many great personalities in the royal order wanted to marry you. Although not all of them were kings, still they all possessed the opulence and riches of the kingly order. They were well-behaved, learned, famous among kings, beautiful in their bodily features and personal qualifications, liberal, very powerful in strength, and advanced in every respect. They were not unfit in any way. And over and above that, your father and your brother had no objection to such a marriage. On the contrary, they gave their word of honor that you would be married with Shishupala. And so the marriage was sanctioned by your parents. Shishupala was such a great king and was so lusty and mad after your beauty that if Shishupal had actually married you, I think Shishupal would have always remained with you just like your faithful servant. Now, in comparison to Shishupal, with his personal qualities, I am nothing. And you may personally realize it. I am surprised that you rejected the marriage with Shishupal and instead accepted me, for I am inferior in comparison to Shishupal. Why, I think myself completely unfit to be your husband because you are so beautiful, sober, grave, and exalted. So, may I inquire from you the reason why you were induced to accept me? Now, of course, I may address you as my beautiful wife, but still I must inform you of my actual position, that I am inferior to all those other princes who wanted to marry you. First of all, you may know that I was so much afraid of Jarasandha that I could not dare live on the land, and so I have thus constructed this house within the water of the sea. It is not my business to disclose this secret to others, but you must know that actually I am not very heroic. Indeed, I am a coward, and I am afraid of my enemies. And still I am not safe, because all the great kings of the land are inimical to me. And I have personally created this inimical feeling by fighting with them in many ways. Now, another fault is that although I am on the throne of Dwaraka, I have no immediate claim to the throne. Although I got a kingdom by killing my maternal uncle Kamsa, the kingdom was to go to my grandfather Ugrasena. So actually, I have no possession of a kingdom. And besides that, I have no fixed aim in life. People cannot understand me very well. What is the ultimate goal of my life? People know very well that I was a cowherder boy in Vrindavan. People expected that I would follow in the footsteps of my foster father, Nanda Maharaj, and be faithful to Srimati Radharani and all of her gopi friends in the village of Vrindavan. But all of a sudden, I left them. I wanted to become a famous prince. Still, I could not have any kingdom, nor could I rule as a prince. So, besides that, I have no fixed aim in life. People cannot understand me very well. What is the ultimate goal of my life? They know very well that I was a cowherder boy in Vrindavan, and people expected that I would follow in the footsteps of my foster father Nanda Maharaj and be faithful to Srimati Radharani and all of her gopi friends in the village of Vrindavan. But all of a sudden, I left them. I wanted to become a famous prince. Still, I could not have any kingdom, nor could I rule as a famous prince. Still, I could not have any kingdom, nor could I rule as a prince. So people are bewildered about my ultimate goal of life. They do not know whether I am a cowherder boy or a prince, whether I am the son of Nanda Maharaj or the son of Vasudeva. And because I have no fixed aim in life, people sometimes call me a vagabond. Therefore, I am surprised that you could select such a vagabond husband. Now, besides this, I am not very much polished, even in social etiquette. For a person should be satisfied with one wife. But as you see, I have married many, many times, and I have more than 16,000 wives. And I cannot please all of them as a polished husband. My behavior with them is not very nice, and I know that you are very conscious of this. I sometimes create a situation with my wives which is not very happy. Because I was trained in a village in my childhood, I am not well acquainted with the etiquette of urban life. I do not know the way to please a wife with nice words and behavior. And from practical experience it is found that any woman who follows my way or becomes attracted by me is ultimately left to cry for the rest of her life. In Vrindavan, many gopis were attracted to me, but I have now left them, and so they are living, but are simply crying for me in separation. I have also heard from Akrura and Uddhava that since I left Vrindavan, all my cowherder boyfriends, the gopis and Radharani, and my foster father Nanda Maharaj, and my mother Yashoda are simply crying constantly for me. I have left Vrindavan for good and am now engaged with the queens here in Dwaraka. But I am not well behaved with any of you, so you can very easily understand that I have no steadiness of character. I am not a very reliable husband, and so the net result of being attracted to me is to acquire a life of bereavement only. My dear beautiful princess, you may also know that I am always penniless. Why, just after my birth, I was carried penniless to the house of Nanda Maharaj, and I was raised just like a cowherder boy. Although my foster father possessed many hundreds and thousands of cows, I was not the proprietor of even one of them. I was simply entrusted with taking care of them and tending them, but I was not the proprietor. Here also, I am not the proprietor of anything, but am always penniless. However, there is no cause to lament for such a penniless condition. I possessed nothing in the past, so why should I lament that I do not possess anything at present? Oh, my dear Rukmini, you may also note that my devotees are not very opulent. They are also very poor in worldly goods. Persons who are very rich, possessing worldly wealth, are not interested in devotion to me or Krishna consciousness. On the contrary, when a person becomes penniless, whether by force or by circumstances, one may become interested in me if one gets the proper opportunity. But persons who are proud of their riches, even if they are offered association with my devotees, still do not take advantage of consciousness of me. In other words, the poorer class of men may have some interest in me, but rich men have no interest. So, my dear princess, I think, therefore, that your selection of me was not very intelligent. You appear very intelligent, trained by your father and brother, but ultimately you have made a great mistake in selecting your life's companion. But there is no harm. The mistake can still be rectified, and it is better late than never. You are at liberty to select now a suitable husband who is actually an equal to you in opulence, family tradition, wealth, beauty, education, in every respect. So whatever mistakes you have made may now be forgotten. Now you may chalk out your own lucrative path of life. Usually, a person does not establish a marital relationship with a person who is either higher or lower than one's position. My dear daughter of the king of Vidarbha, I think you did not consider very sagaciously before your marriage. Thus, you made a wrong selection by choosing me as your husband. You mistakenly heard about my having a very exalted character, but factually, I was nothing more than a beggar. Without seeing me and without seeing my actual position, and simply by hearing about me, you thus selected me as your husband. This was not very rightly done. Therefore, I advise you, better late than never. So now you may select one of the great Kshatriya princes and accept him as your life's companion. And now you may reject me. So now Prabhupada gives an explanation of what was going on here. Krishna was proposing that Rukmini divorce him at a time when Rukmini already had grown-up children. Therefore, Krishna's whole proposition appeared to be something unexpected, because according to Vedic culture, there is no such thing as separation of husband and wife by divorce. Nor was it possible for Rukmini to choose a new husband at her advanced age, when she had many married sons. To Rukmini, every one of Krishna's proposals appeared crazy, and Rukmini was surprised that Krishna could say such things. Simple as she was, Rukmini's anxiety was increasing more and more at the thought of separation from Krishna. And we will continue this next week, because there's much more in this episode. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.